Sorry, didn't see you there. Today I'm going to give you a lesson on Black Dog. Basically, tips and tricks that I used when I was learning it that will hopefully help some of you who are also learning it. And also, if you just want to learn how to gliss and slide and glide, then this is also your video. So, I'm going to get set up. I'll talk again. So I'm not warmed up at all, and I do have an actual lesson happening in 37 minutes, so I think I can get through most of it. I took pictures of all the places that I'm going to talk about, so I just gotta find those. What's going to take probably the most amount of explanation is just the beginning two lines. And that's the thing that happens over and over and over throughout the entire piece. So it begins on a low F. You play a chromatic scale as fast as you can, and then in the third bar, it's an A sharp to B natural. Think of those as trills, because what's happening ensemble-wise is actually very flexible. You can play those whatever speed you want, because everyone's just essentially holding a note, and then you decide sort of when to go on. So it's a full chromatic scale, and then think of the A sharp to B natural 30-second notes as just a trill, basically. So it's gonna just sound like this. And the thing about this is that because it's such a crazy piece and there's so much going on, it doesn't need to be exact. In fact, it's better if it's not exact. So after you play the A sharp to B natural trill, 30-second notes, you have 30-second notes that go from a C natural to an E flat, and they're little circles over the E flat. So instead of going from, I hope you can see my hands okay, instead of going from a C to an E flat and doing it that way, you can actually keep your thumb and register finger down and just press the A key as sort of a cheat fingering for an E flat. It's the same exact note, and you can just, instead of so that's a little bit easier. And the eighth notes that follow, you have an E flat without a circle over it, and then an E flat with a circle over it. Like, the circles basically alternate. It's just like, it's a different sound for each note, because it's just easier to play it. So the one with the A key is just a little bit sharper, sounds a little different. It's kind of like a timbre trill without actually doing a trill. You're just using, they're still E flats, they just sound a little bit different, and that's what we want. If you think of like a guitar player, like a lot of this are just like effects that electric guitar players have that we don't. Because this is a piece where we get to make all the sounds that aren't allowed in classical music. So, you know, a la electric guitar. It's an awesome piece. So that's what that is. Now there's like the squiggly mark from an E flat to a C. You're on an E flat, you lower the pitch a lot in the back of your throat. And try it just while holding out the E flat, just lowering the pitch. And see how low you can get it by relaxing the back of your throat and dropping your jaw slightly. And also the inside of your mouth kind of changes. Kind of if you're doing like ew to like that sound. And then you scoop down to a C. And when you go down to the C, you kind of return your mouth back to its normal embouchure so that the C is in tune. For a lot of this, a lot of it is just practicing these weird sounds in slow motion to get all of the, because a lot of times, like, the secret behind glisses is a 3-step process where you're on a note, you drop the pitch, you slide your fingers, and then everything kind of comes back. And it's just about practicing that a bunch of times until it feels natural, because when we're taught how to play B-flat clarinet, we're taught that we shouldn't be moving anything up in here, which is problematic for when you're trying to learn how to do fun things. It's a 3-step process, and I wasn't able to get these on my first try either. So if you don't get it right away, just keep at it. Just sit in a practice room or your room, wherever you practice, and just make a lot of weird sounds for like an hour, just to push the boundaries of what you think is an acceptable sound for a clarinet to make. I believe the 5th bar, where it's back to a tempo, and you'll see my notes in the piece too. It says RES trill. That means a resonance trill or a timbre trill, where you're trilling and the pitches, or you're trilling on a C basically, and it's a C throughout, but you're putting fingers down so that there's a different sounding sound. I'll just play it. What I do here is I trill with my right hand, but I also bend the pitch a little bit. So when I hit that C, I'm doing 2 things. I'm bending the pitch twice and bringing it back up, and I'm also using my right hand to sort of bring down. What did I do? This hand, and also putting down the E flat key. It's a little much. I don't think that's what I did, but do something to make it sound like an electric guitar with a whammy board, or whammy bar. You know what I'm talking about? So for a long time I was doing the A key, E flat. And then when it switches to the D, I use the 2nd trill key for the D. But you can actually, to make it faster, you can use the top 2 trill keys to get an E flat. It's actually faster to alternate hands instead of keeping it all in one hand with the A. And that E flat fingering is very, I want to say, unstable. It's very unstable. So it does take a little bit of work to get it, maybe like drop your jaw a little bit, to really get it to speak, because it does tend to jump to the higher partial. So just remember to stay really super relaxed through all of that. I zoomed too far in to actually see the measure that I'm supposed to be talking about, but it's an E natural with the circle over it as opposed to the E flat. So I was just adding the fork key here. Just to raise the pitch a little bit. You can also do a B flat without the thumb and register. So that's a little harder to coordinate with the gliss going down to the C, but using a B flat fingering will also help, because you use the A for the E flat fingering, and if you use a B flat fingering without the thumb and register, that also gives you the same effect. We've got a C sharp with the circles over it. We're just going to use regular C sharp and alternate it with the C plus the bottom 2 side keys, like the trill fingering basically. And when I scoop down, I drop the pitch, I move my fingers down to a C, and then I bring the pitch up as I hit the C. So a lot of this just depends on, like, a lot of the fast stuff is just wood shedding, basically. And what I mean by wood shedding is sitting in a practice room and putting in the time with a metronome. It's okay if it's not exact. This is me as a teacher telling you it's okay if it's not exact. So, so the next thing that we have are the Altissimo fingerings for where it starts on quarter note equals 72. And I don't have a stand, so I'm just gonna plop my phone right here and hope that it goes well. Going up to the high A flat, for the fingering, for the G fingering, I use middle 1-2 register, and also thumb and register. Oh, sorry. So thumb and register, middle 1-2 E flat key. So this is the fingering I'm using for the G. Because the A flat fingering is I'm gonna be using 2, 3, 1 in the E flat key. So you're basically overblowing a high E flat key to get the A flat out. I'm trying to be very obvious with my fingers so that you can see the fingerings, where normally I wouldn't be, this far away. I tend to keep things very close, but I want you to be able to see the fingerings in case you don't know them. All right, we're doing the same thing up to a high B flat, which is essentially an overblown F, like this F. Same G, and then we're going to an overblown F, which you can keep the register key down, but take the thumb off. And then the next one we have is the high C, which is thumb and register, first finger, this key, sometimes the fork, and a lot of hope. And those are the Altissimo fingerings for the really high stuff. All right, moving on. Oh, all right, so this one I had an existential crisis. I think in the first episode of the Black Dog series, I was sitting in a practice room, not unlike this one. Actually, it was the exact same practice room that I was in. And I was trying to figure out what fingering I was going to use for the high A flat. And every single time I played it in rehearsal, it was bad. So I had to find a good fingering where I felt comfortable with it coming out. And for whatever reason, going from the C sharp and overblowing an E flat just wasn't working. It wasn't working for me, but you just gotta pick one and stick with it. And I changed mine, so. So I use thumb and register, side key, and E flat key. Yeah, because going from the C sharp to an overblown E flat just is not great. And it's hard to coordinate. It's hard to get it to slur to that partial. So that's why I go from the C sharp to thumb and register, side key, E flat key, and also the fork. Pretty straightforward. It's the F sharp eighth notes. Also, these are not in order of the pages because the pages were out of order when I took these photos, but you'll be able to find where they are. Alright, so the F sharp eighth notes where it says SK and 1, that stands for side key and first finger. So all of the things that you're not supposed to do, because we're taught when you go from an F, from a chromatic F, you use the side keys, but we're alternating between the chromatic F sharp and the first finger F sharp to give it sort of a slow timbre trill effect. For whatever reason, I have a hard time bending the pitch down on this F sharp to get to the F natural, so just drop everything if that's the case.